And they explained to me what it was, and I said, oh, I didn't realize it just had a name.
Kids baseball.
Well, I mean, this is 40 years ago.
Baseball.
My son's 40.
Gosh, this is, okay, I'd like to call to order.
And you have to.
I have a,
Oh, yes.
okay, yeah.
Okay.
All right. I'd like to call to order the June 15th, 2020 Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Brenda, could you please do a roll call?
Brandon,
Present.
Brenda,
Present.
Melissa,
I'm here.
Patricia,
Here.
Matt, Alyssa.
Here. And welcome.
Yes, I was gonna say first, I would like to introduce Alyssa Mueller. She is the new member of our committee, and she is from the city council.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Nice to meet all of you.
She tried really hard to make the other two meetings, like, I'm sorry. But, so we're here now. And so I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the April 20th, 2022 Park and Recreation Board.
Okay, April minutes.
The April minutes, yes.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Are there any questions or comments? All of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Okay, now the May 18th, that wasn't an official meeting,
But
so.
we can still, it was a workshop.
Okay,
We go, so we can.
so I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the workshop meeting minutes for the May 18th, 2022 workshop. Oh, you've got it right there, right for me to read. The Park and Recreation Advisory.
We were here, we
We
can't.
can. Do I hear a first?
So moved.
Nick Bush? Second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
I just have a question. It says here in my notes that Alyssa was absent, so she can't.
Well, we didn't have, it's a workshop.
Oh,
Oh.
okay. Because I was gonna say, you can't make a motion.
Well, because I wouldn't know, well, I guess, Tricia, you could second it, I guess.
I second it, because.
Or first or second.
Yeah, sorry.
Because they couldn't do anything either, because they weren't here either.
Change it to a room.
Yes, please. Okay, are there any public comments from anyone? I would like to make a very quick public comment about Sterling Ponds. I don't know how many of you watch the city council meetings and plan commission, but back in 2019, this board approved the Sterling Ponds Park Plan, which included 5 acres of land being removed from parkland and to be made traditional neighborhood commercial. The city council is in the process of undedicating that. The citizens of Sterling Park have gotten together and they're not very happy with that. We're not here to discuss that. We discussed it in 2019, but as I told Amy Peterson, we are the park board, and so if someone sees you in the grocery store, it says what's going on at Sterling Ponds, I wanted you to at least know what was happening. The city council is going to meet on this on July 12th. So if you want to talk to city council or attend the meeting just to know what's going on with the parks, that would certainly be appropriate. And I guess that's all I have to say.
And just that the acreage that we now have at the park and then that hillside is more than needed for that development. So I mean, that's why we sort of did it back then, was because.
And the park plan said when we determined that we were going to invest $600,000 in this area. And the park plan that we approved said when those things are implemented, then this additional land that's off to the north would no longer be needed. But those haven't been implemented. So they've got a few things, but they don't have a shelter, they don't have, and so anyway, the whole question is before the city council now. So with that, we go on to the discussion items number 1, the Outdoor Recreation Plan Steering Committee number 4. Stephanie, take it away.
Excellent. I'm gonna pass out some stuff here quick. I want you to pay attention as you're getting the agenda, which is already in your packet, but there's a on the top, I've written a park name, which is our
Oh, this is our exercise.
icebreaker. So what's written at the top of your agenda is your
Okay.
exercise. So for Alyssa, I'm known to I like to do icebreakers, even though most of us already know each other. I like to.
You got enough parks there, otherwise you're gonna have mine.
There should be enough there.
I don't want to.
You know what? I actually
Get
do
two
too.
probably.
I did
There's
too.
enough.
I
so you
have
could have
subject
two.
too.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Choose this one. Okay.
Oh,
Even-
How I referred to it just today.
But I will get our PowerPoint up here. So we've got a fair amount of different things that we'll chat through today. I've got some things and markers up here, so we're gonna put you to work and get you thinking a little creatively today, but we'll do our introductions, a quick update on. Oh. Oops, I always hit them.
Oh, we're catching up on the news.
If you call that
65
news.
degrees. 65 degrees out.
And then just go. to the- Yep.
There's something.
No, that's.
You don't have to record it because it's.
Slideshow, is it the slideshow tab?
I'll just show you this. That way, make sure we have it. Okay. Then we'll do a little update on goals and then some updates on some inventory components, and then we'll spend most of our time talking about needs and some next steps. So we'll do our introductions. So you'll have your park that I quickly wrote at the top of your agenda there. So as we go through and do our introductions, we want your elevator pitch or your marketing pitch on why that is the best park in River Falls. So I think Cindy got one.
Did you get Hoffman?
No. I am doing a pitch for Glen Park. It is our oldest park, and it is our most beloved park of all the parks in River Falls. And the cool thing about it is it was called Glen Park because it was a glen. And the Glen Park used to have a zoo, which we have some history on. And right now it's got one of the best splash pads around. And I can say that from yesterday because at 10 o'clock, there were probably 50 people there in the splash pad already. So that was absolutely cool to see. We have our Glen Park pool that, although it is 85 plus years old, it is still working. And the one in Chippewa Falls I just heard was that and it's not as old as ours, and they're like gonna probably tear it down and not have anything. So they're in a quandary in Chippewa Falls right now. And so I'm thinking, and we can hold our 85-year-old pool together. My son too.
Raise your hand.
So, but it's got great playground equipment. It's got the most beautiful pavilion that people can rent year round. And it's got pickleball that were just redone and they look absolutely awesome. And that's utilized also just about 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
And it's got great playground equipment and people just love it because they're all Minnesota plates that are there.
Excellent.
Okay, I'm Brenda, the recreation assistant, and I think the best park is Hoffman Park, where we have 3 shelters to choose from. The Tri-Angels Playground or another playground. We have the First National Bank at River Falls Field. We have 2 ball fields. We have volleyball. Lots of bathrooms, camping, all sorts of wonderful stuff.
Very good.
I have Collins Park, and it may be one of the better kept secrets. Collins is located on the west side of town. It's got great walking trails, and it's the only gazebo of any of our parks. It's got a beautiful gazebo. scenery, nice recreational area, and they found it. So check it out if you haven't. And next year, it's going to get a brand new trip. So a great trip.
So I have Hamilton Park, and I will honestly say, I don't know much about Hamilton Park. I do. Do you? I'm gonna be honest, I don't know.
You could have looked it up on your phone.
I know what I was thinking, and I looked it up on there.
Oh, yeah.
That was you, then you want to come back to me? I don't know much about Hamilton Park,
But it's the best park.
but it is the best part. They have great green space, they have a really great fun playground for the kids, they love it.
They do, it was updated in the last couple of years, and so there's always people out there now in the
Okay.
neighborhood, so it's interesting. Sits on the corner of Washington and Washington, figure that one out, don't ask me why, that's Washington Street and Washington Street. It's well attended. I see it from my kitchen window every time I stand in the kitchen.
So I'm also at Larson Park. Where?
South side of town. South side of town, off of Sorensen Street,
Okay.
Cemetery Road. It's just south.
Okay, and it also is a hidden gem.
Very good.
It has the best trails through there.
As I live on the north side of town, I am planning to make many trips there because it's so lovely. And can't wait for people to visit Larson Park.
Well, I have Sterling Ponds. And one of the things, a park has got to be good if the people are willing to fight for it. So they have come to us, for those who don't know, Sterling Ponds is pretty much disconnected with the city. So the only park these children have is the Sterling Ponds Park. They can't get on their bikes. They can't be at Hoffman Park and decide they want to go up to Highview. You're in that community, that's your park. And because that's their park, there are always children out there. They have volleyball and they have a basketball court. And they're going to be getting a shelter. They don't have it yet, but they're going to get a shelter. They're going to get a berm because Highway 35 is right there. I just saw make sure this turned off. Yes, okay. And the children can all walk there. They don't have to, like Hoffman Park's kind of hard to get to, but every child in the neighborhood can get themselves to Sterling Ponds Park. It's made for children that are more like 3 to 12. I think 12 is, basketball and volleyball. I take that back, the whole neighborhood. And we even had a thing, they were gonna get that round soccer that they wanted to put together. What's that game called?
The Gaga pit.
The Gaga pit. I haven't seen that out there, but they'll be the first. And do we get to count the disc golf attached to Sterling Ponds?
We'll be there soon.
So they're going to be getting a very rugged professional type disc golf. That's really tough.
18 holes.
18 holes.
Wow, cool.
So that's Sterling Ponds for you.
Cool. I have a very little park located on a very busy street in River Falls, named after a very dear friend whose family goes way back in River Falls. His father, Harry, worked at the power plant forever, and then Lloyd worked at the power plant, and then Lloyd worked at City Hall and was the city clerk, and et cetera, and et cetera, et cetera. This beautiful little park has a picnic table, overlooks, of course, what was City Hall, or what was the city library, what was this, and what was that. This is now the fire hall, which who knows what, but it's named for my Uncle Lloyd, so I like this park.
It's got a seed library there too.
Yes, it
The only
does.
one in town.
And it's also the smallest in town.
Yeah, it's a tiny little piece, but just big enough for a picnic table and a little bench. But that's what Lloyd would have wanted,
As I
you know,
say, if you're gonna have lunch, what more you need?
and that's what he liked, so.
Well, we saved the best for last. And that is Veterans Park.
Oh, yes, you are correct.
And I did use the city's resource just to, make sure I didn't miss anything. It has wonderful things, because of the stage. So, you can do like the music in the park, which everybody loves. And it has a wonderful memorial to the veterans of the area, specifically River Falls. It's beautiful if you haven't seen it. But I think the most important thing about the park is really 3 words: Location, location, location. It couldn't be any better placed than on the main drag. You can stop into some shops and do some shopping. You can stop into some establishments and have something to eat or get something to drink. And you can still just step out the door and, you know, be in this wonderful little park. So yeah, Veterans is the best.
And way back when Patricia and I were younger, you would cruise the loop.
Yeah.
And you would park in front of then called Bums Park, AKA Veterans Park. And there was the waterfalls there and all that stuff, and everybody would sit there and watch that.
And a little bridge.
And the little bridge, you cross over the bridge and have a little fun, but you know, it was a very nice little downtown park for many years.
And before that, it's where everyone took their ashes, because it was ash.
It was Ash Park.
Cash back because the
local
merchants,
businesses,
you know, would dump their ashes.
Ashes there.
popular meeting place. If you're gonna meet somebody, you'd always say, we'll meet at Bums, or, you know,
Well,
we'll meet at the
it's-
Playful.
It's Veterans Park because during the wars, that's where the casualties were listed.
Yep.
So you went to see if someone from Ellsworth had passed or not passed, and were killed. So anyway, it does have a very good history.
Well, that was a very fun little
Yeah,
exercise.
thank you.
And so, and I'm glad we're recorded so we can play that back. We can, you know, send it to administration and they can come up with a new marketing with everything you came up with. So that was fun. And I think it's very telling when you're thinking about too, we start with maybe some of the easier ones for staff in terms of the bigger ones, the regional parks that we're more aware of, and then the, you know, the neighborhood or local parks. And just interesting too to recognize, though you're maybe longtime residents, where, you know, that there are some resources that not everybody is aware of. So just kind of want to think about it from that perspective as well. But then jumping into our agenda here, I wanted to give us a little time to just touch on key themes and goals. It's kind of a good thing for us to remember as we walk through things. So we touched on this at our last meeting where I was virtual, but again, just our structure of our goals, our priorities, and our implementation actions, and really those goals being those important components for us that are going to set our direction for where we want to be going over the next 5 and 20 years. So nothing new from that perspective. And then just remembering as well, and I just wanted to make sure I highlighted this because I think not everybody was in attendance last month, as just a quick reminder, and maybe I think Alyssa, you're on the bike ped committee, so you're aware of the full concept here, but that we are adding a recreation plan element to the comprehensive plan. So it's not required by state statutes, but with the importance and how much recreation has been talked about so far through this process, we wanted to make sure it had a space in the comprehensive plan as well. So just kind of hitting on a reminder of that as well. And then another quick reminder, and I should have mentioned, you all do have a copy of the PowerPoint as well that got passed out. So on our key themes and goals. And so thinking back again to that key themes exercise, we went through in kind of those 4 categories that had been established from there, and thinking of some focus on making sure that we are considering what we have today and how those are maintained and improved moving forward, creating the opportunity for new facilities and what those new facilities can bring forth, the ability to emphasize and connect with our resources through our parks system. So some of those things not necessarily being active recreation, but passive recreation, how much the importance of our parks into our quality of life, and then just our things from our overall system in terms of accessibility. We talked about sports organization and that important community and social component that they bring in our park system, and then obviously maintenance and operations. We're going to have it, we need to keep it and maintain it. So that again was our quick update there. I have some draft goals and concepts that are in a very working stage that I was going to read through for us, but any questions on you know, kind of this update and remembering where we're starting, where we're coming from. Okay. So this is hard to read, and it's probably even hard to read on here, so I apologize for that. But what we have been trying to do from a goals perspective, and this is included in the comprehensive plan, is thinking broadly of overall goals for the plan. So though these are seated and rooted in some of the new facilities or existing facilities in that last chart that we were looking at. We want these goals to kind of stand on their own so that you can just read a goal and be able to interpret and use that goal in a lot of different ways. So for the comprehensive plan, for example, we may have a goal that is really getting at what we want to see for housing, but that also connects to our transportation system, because people need to be able to get to work from their home, and it connects to utilities, because of course we need to connect our, and we need to have water and sewer at our houses and things like that. So trying to think about that from that higher level, kind of overarching goals from that standpoint, and beyond that, as we get into the analysis, really identifying what those priorities or key things are that we want to be looking at across some topical areas here as well. So these are still in working form, but wanted to just kind of pause and hit on a couple of areas that we were thinking. These goal statements are intended to be that we are saying 20 years from now, this is what we're saying about River Falls. They may be statements that apply to us today. We start with has a well-maintained system of parks. That's a true statement for us today. We want to make sure that that is a statement that still holds true 5 years from now and is something that holds true 20 years from now. But then we get into that provide a variety of amenities and activities that serve the recreation needs of community and visitors. Again, probably things that still apply today, but allow for some flexibility. We talk about active partnerships with communities and other partners to respond to emerging and changing recreation trends and needs. I'll use Gaga Ball. I don't even know what Gaga Ball is. Same, you guys, some of you do, but that's an example there where we don't know. We don't have a crystal ball to say that, you know,
It's gonna be popular.
it's going to be popular or anything, but that we are being aware. We're staying in tune with the community to understand what some of those needs are, and that we can respond and react and you know, put up a court or whatever Gaga Ball needs. And if it doesn't work, then we tear it down and move on to La La Ball, or I don't know. That we include spaces for the community to gather and recreate in many forms, and prioritize spaces that provide opportunities to connect people and resources. So here we really are wanting to emphasize was a lot to be said about community connection. So not only for a space for us to come socialize, a space for us to come celebrate, to have a birthday party, to have a wedding, whatever that might be, but then also that connection to our resources. And these are things that are definitely more on the passive recreation component versus the active recreation. We're not going to a park to play soccer or baseball, but we're maybe still walking to the park. We're still being active in some way, but maybe just more in a passive space. And so when we look at like our inventory that we'll talk about next, you know, when we're counting the number of fields and courts, that's our active recreation, but we don't want to lose sight of that passive recreation component as well, because that is it's just as an important part of a healthy lifestyle as being physically active as well.
And when you talk about resources, are you talking financial resources or what?
They're more on our natural resources or
Okay.
cultural resources.
Okay.
And then we want to balance our needs, our social opportunities, cultural celebration, and public art opportunities into our park infrastructure. So that's getting very specific about some of those newer concepts that we've talked about. When we get into the inventory, we start to identify, like, we've got little libraries that are a part of our park system. How should those be identified? What opportunities do we have for public art? We'll use Veterans Park as an example, some monuments and things like that people connect to. We want to have a park system that's accessible to all, that provides people spaces for people to connect and recreate in a manner that meets their needs, from organized sports to social celebrations. So wanting to be very specific there in the end that, and I would be interested in thoughts too, didn't think that we needed to have a goal very specific to our organized sports, because that's just a component, but recognizing the importance of it there, from our organized sports to social celebrations, that we're trying to hit that full gamut of function. And we focus on maintenance and operations of existing investments to ensure safe, equitable, and accessible recreation opportunities for all. So they're still working, and as I was reading through them, noticing a few little things that need to be modified there, but they're definitely still working from that concept. As we've kind of read through them and kind of their purposes, any initial comments, reactions, anything that you feel is missing when we've been thinking about where we want our park system to be that we're not hitting in these 6 areas?
I think you've done a very good job with regard to, as a senior citizen, and I hope 20 years from now, I'm walking down a pathway and I'm not afraid I'm going to trip or a bicycle's going to hit me.
Mhm.
I certainly would not care about skate parks, but pickleball courts, and even probably some disc golf, as long as it's pretty simple. But I do appreciate that we're not just looking at parks as a place for kids to play, that adults do like to get out and smell and know, if you're walking a pathway, if something were to happen, there's people around,
Mhm.
instead of some kind of a, dirt path you're walking on your own. So I appreciate that you've considered that.
Ditto.
Goals are hard, because you're trying to fit everything in,
Yes.
and make it wide enough, but yet make it narrow enough that's specific to us, but nobody's looked very good.
Yeah.
Excellent. So we'll do a little refinement here, but this will be something we'll pass out to you guys virtually via email, so you can take a look and wordsmith if anybody's a wordsmith or things like that, but keep that piece moving forward as well. So then we want to get into the inventory, now that I've sat and put my foot to sleep. And this is something I keep that you've seen before on multiple occasions.
These are big.
I was gonna say, except this time they're in readable version.
Okay. But they are also in still in a draft state. So we had a great conversation with staff last week to talk about what were we missing, what more do we need to do, do we even classify and all the parks that we want to be including and things like that. So there is a backside to it as well, just for reference. So I don't want to have us spend a ton of time going through all of the details, but more wanted to hit on some of the updates that we're working on. I will note that this version was just provided to staff today as well, so there's more work that has to be done to it. But because we were meeting, I wanted you all to know what was happening with it. So if staff also wants to add anything to this, please do so. But I think we will talk about some of the park classifications that are on the top. This is one change from what you've seen before. So now we've got them in some groupings, some similar parks together. So we'll walk through a little bit of what that means, but more on the, I think, pocket park and special use park. There's a couple areas where we have some new parks. So from a pocket park perspective, and we'll get into the definitions here, those are our smallest of parks. So as Brenda was talking about Osnes, that's a small little one there, but there are also some other spaces in the community that provide similar value. So we've got INLOW, whether you want to spell it the way that it is there, or INLOW. And then the First National Bank triangle, and then our plaza that we have right out here. That again, these are generally provide more of a passive recreation. They're gathering spaces, they're spaces for you to sit and connect with whatever might be at that space, but those are some additional parks that have been identified here. You'll notice that we don't have, that's one of those areas where we need to work with staff to make sure the numbers are correct here. I thought I remembered 2 benches, so I threw 2 benches out there in City Hall Plaza, but I could be wrong.
Just to ask, but
Yeah.
how soon do you need this feedback back?
It's not imperative, but if we could get it in the next 2 weeks, that would be great. And then we also added on the special use park, and this is where another one where we did add the grow to share garden, whether that should be here or if it should be incorporated, that's something we're still working with. But then also and this is where I wanted to make sure our notes are correct, but the North Winter Parkway, where we have a odd little boulevard that divides the street. So you've got traffic in one direction, they've got a nice little boulevard that extends for a block that has beautiful grass and some ash trees. that could provide some kind of use stuff. Right now, there's really no function to the space, but as an opportunity for us, so highlighting things there. And then we did add the schools need to be a part of our needs assessment, where the schools are, they are, open to the public at certain points of the day, so they are considered public, from that standpoint. If, for example, Sterling Ponds had been a park that an HOA had constructed and was only available to residents, we wouldn't include, those are facilities that we don't want to highlight here, we want to recognize that they exist, but we can't count to those in our needs assessment if they're not available to the general public. So schools get handled in a little different fashion there, but we want to recognize what they have available to us as well. And then we won't go through all of the details here at this point, but there were some changes made to the categories from the versions that the amenity types from the versions you've seen before, like we have backstops in Hoffman. And so wanting to, recognize that they are there, they don't totally have the same amenities as a full baseball or softball field. So just, recognizing them in their own right, adding in the fitness trail that, exists. What else do we have in here? Wanting to add in some more detail on your shelters, whether they're, just general, they're there for you at all times, or are they something that's a reservable resource? We separated out the restrooms, so we've got, if there is a restroom facility, if it's a building, how many stalls are available, or is it just there's 2 porta potties, in there as well. So just some additional detail throughout the little libraries and community garden there added at the bottom. So I think anything I'm missing from just the overall change concept, recognizing there's still edits that have to happen here, but anything I missed from our staff discussion?
Well, I don't think so, but Kendra and Emily, Cindy, and you were all part of the meeting. Anything jumping out?
Well, I was thinking backstop, but I think it's a batting cage is what we talked about, is a
okay.
batting cage versus a backstop.
Oh, okay.
And then, I guess I question, I know, why did you say that? I know we wanted to highlight that First National Bank is there, but really not ours, but Triangle's is, so I wasn't quite sure on Triangle, or on the pocket part, you go First National.
I'm trying to figure out
It
that
says
and
triangle.
and Lowell Park.
Triangle.
And we're
Triangle?
And
That's
where's
just
the
that
triangle?
First National Bank triangle. That's. what-
Oh,
Triangle.
outside of First National Bank,
Oh,
Triangle. Okay,
Yes.
okay,
Oh,
okay, so, and then Enlow is,
And Enlow Park is where? I've never heard of it.
Well, and I may not be, I had
Sorry.
Tom say there's 2 spellings of it and it's 2 different things, but INLOW, but it's that little parking lot right across from St. B's. And the point we made is there's a little bit of green space. You could add, there's a little bench. It's that little parking lot right across from St. B's, right on Main.
Oh, we're parking share?
Little park, park and ride
There's a
almost kind of
triangular
thing.
kiosk.
But there's a little sitting area you could create there, but there's a little bench, or has been in the past, but you ever put a picnic table, but it's, again, just trying to capture these spaces to kind of inventory what we have. It may be blank in every single thing, but we wanted to capture those just kind of little
Okay,
other
well,
areas.
spelled
So-
this way, there was a family that lived in River Falls with this spelling.
Yeah.
It's spelled with the INLOW. They had the jewelry store in River Falls, but they're basically from Hudson. But
Do you know which one that would be though, Brenda, in this case?
in this case, I would say it's the ENLOE.
Yeah, I would
That's
too.
what I had thought, because Tom had said there was a distinction in the same description you just gave, but we just wanted to make sure we
Great minds think
captured that space, so.
Oh, Townies think alike, I should say.
But yeah, it's that little pocket of space
Okay.
division in North Main, right
Okay,
across from St. B's school.
And in the DeSantis Park, they do have a porta potty there. The restrooms are closed to people. You have to rent the place to have bathrooms.
Yeah.
You,
which are getting vandalized, but.
are they
Porta potty.
still?
The porta potty.
Oh, the porta potty.
No, I-
spent enough time to vandalize it in a porta potty.
Well, firecrackers first. and
That little
then-
branch.
and draw.
And he walks to me. they've got a
everybody
couple
carries a
bars.
can of spray paint with them, don't they? They're gonna do
Oh,
that.
Here, let me show you.
Cindy, how much time do you want to spend some time on this thing? Because I was going to say, one of the things the park group could do, we could just send comments out, and then staff is gonna spend some time too going through, and probably 2 weeks from now, we'll just set up again a short call and kind of go through and hash out one last time.
So I wanted you guys to have this. If there are things you want to talk about, we can. Otherwise, my thought was that we're gonna work with staff and get some updated numbers, which is probably the most relevant thing for you guys to use. If you want to spend time on what we have now, I'm happy to take any comments, but we will be able to quickly turn around updates after staff had the opportunity to review, and then that's probably the version that makes a little bit more sense for you to dive deep into. We don't forecast a ton of changes. I mean, a lot of this stuff should be what it is, but there are some of those little details and things we, changed. I think camping is there camping? Yes, one, but now we've got number of sites, camping sites and some of those things. So just some more detail in there. So, so I guess if there is anything else you guys want to talk about here on this inventory, or just know that soon we'll have another updated version that we will send.
Under the schools, just update, it's called Rocky Branch, not Rock Branch.
Oh,
Add a Y in there.
okay.
Well, so I've got 2 weeks to go count the swing sets in Hoffman Park. Yes. Which I'm gonna do tonight.
Okay.
Count those swings.
You could, but staff will do that too,
Yeah.
so.
Yes.
But I think it really, we could spend as much time as the group wants to, but I would say otherwise send the comments, Cindy and I, we'll capture them, we'll roll back with Emily and
Yeah.
Kendra and our group, and then get them all down. But if you're seeing stuff, just send us an email over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. And I
So,
think-
what do you mean by, the big goal, as you kind of alluded to, is trying to not undercount, but also not double count, because we know this will drive a lot of future decisions. So we don't want to misrepresent what we do or don't have.
Exactly.
Like our 72 drinking fountains in Hoffman Park.
So,
That's heavy in air.
Yeah, I was wondering.
it's drinking water, so maybe that is not totally right,
Well,
but
would there be one for every campsite?
that's what we were,
There's
I think.
15.
Yeah,
All right, then you
It wouldn't be
have
75,
first in
but-
all field, 2 or 3 at every shelter.
There's not
There's
one at
no
every,
one
there's
at
not at every campsite.
So I can't imagine there's 72.
So that could be.
So that could be a
Typo.
typo.
27 might sound a little better.
That could be. Sometimes I am a little dyslexic.
We
Well,
all are.
I'm looking at picnic tables maybe closer to it also. It could be that it's maybe offline
That
also.
could be.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I think there's more than one.
So anyway, yes.
Moving on.
So-
Yeah. But then so that was kind of a little update for us. I wanted this, of course, as we were just alluding to, does feed directly into that 5-year needs assessment. That's part of making sure that we have a plan that is DNR compliant. And so, going back to maybe our first or second meeting where we are looking at, based on our population, standards are that we should have 1 baseball field for every 1,500 people. Okay, that means that we need 10 baseball fields, and so we only have 5 that, to meet those standards. Do we actually need 5 more? That's the next part of our process. But so I wanted to just hit on this needs assessment component, because this is the next phase for us. And so if you remember back, I think it was our meeting back in March, we talked about that there are a lot of metrics that we can use, some different data points that we could start with to run this assessment. And so we've done some analysis of what makes sense here. And so I wanted to present a little bit of that to you. We're not deciding anything here today, but wanted to get some reaction from you. So starting on the left are the different data points that you can start with. So the metrics that, based on your budget or the number of parks that you have in the system you can use those metrics to say, based on all of the other parks in the nation, or, the generalization of what that standard is, this is how many of X, Y, and Z you should have to meet that national standard. So in going through that, there were some things there that on the right that we thought were maybe not the best metrics for us to start with. And just kind of walking through those, the parks budget is one that changes. We don't have really control over what that is. That's based on a lot of other factors. And so I don't, from that standpoint, I would hate for us to base things on a budget that we have today and that either grows and now we don't know what to do, or it decreases and we're trying to understand how we can meet the goals and implementation that we've set. Kind of in the same space from the full-time employees standpoint. That also is going to ebb and flow with budgets and things. And so, you know, rather than, you know, if for some reason staffing levels decrease or you have the opportunity to increase, and I just, you know, the metric there doesn't seem to be the best. The population per square mile is one that has a lot of different when we're thinking about a national standard that those metrics are being based on. It just felt a little wonky because, you know, if we were to look at, you know, the area around campus versus what Sterling Ponds or the next residential development is going to be, that those densities and things are different and ever changing. And so that one just, there seemed to be better metrics for us to work on. And then the region as well, that's just a broad category for us to look at. And so, you know, the others allow us to be a little bit more specific. So that gets us down into, you know, an actual population total. This is the number of people we have here. These are the, you know, direct people we're planning for. So that seemed to be a good metric. The acres of parkland is another, this is what we have that we're dealing with here today. When you recheck do your assessment again in 5 years and you've added a park, then you can see how that goes. The number of parks, again, is some kind of in that same space as the acres. And then the jurisdiction type is another kind of standard one. You are a city operating, you know, under that city form of government and resource types and things like that. So those seemed to be kind of some good areas for us to work on. I did throw in the full-time employees back when I ran a quick analysis here just to see how things would align. But so then trying to truth. So what we're going to want to do is we're looking through and doing the needs assessment. We don't want to be pulling all of these metrics for all of these different categories. We want to pick one or two that we're really looking at. Like, we feel like our population and number of parks really makes the most sense for us. We don't want to run all 5 because then we've got some wiggle room in there that we have to kind of work through. But I did run through just at a high level what this analysis starts to look like for us so we can start to compare. So just an overview of what we're looking at from a table perspective. We pulled our playground, softball fields, and basketball courts, just 3 random amenity things that we can look at, and then also the number of residents per park. And just based on our 2020 population total, we have 660 residents per park. And
So does that include, I hate to cut you off, but does that include Osnes Park as well as Hoffman Park?
it included the regional parks, neighborhood parks, pocket parks, linear parks, and special use parks. So I
Okay,
think I counted 24. I don't think I included City Hall Plaza or like First National Bank, just because they were so much smaller, but I did include Osnes in that one.
okay.
So, but then, yeah, so going through then further on our top row there, we've then got those different metrics that we can organize by. And then the first column underneath it each is the NRPA metric, is that national standard. Based on, you know, similar communities of our population. So it's grouped on populations under 20,000 is the population metric there. The standard is that you should have just one playground for just under every 2,000 people that you have. And then running that out based on our 2020 population, then how many playgrounds do we need? How many softball fields, how many basketball courts, excuse me, do we need? And so then it's the next phase of that process after we were to run this would be then to look at our inventory to then say, okay, if it says that we need 4 basketball courts, we have, you know, 1, there is a need based on this standard. That doesn't mean that we're going to say that this plan is going to say we need 3. We're going to look at public engagement to say, do we actually need 3 more? But I'm getting ahead of myself from that standpoint. So it is just interesting to look at then how some of these things compare when we're looking at those different metrics that are available for us to use. So from a playground perspective, when we use our population, it says we need a lot more playgrounds than the other 4 that we picked that are all consistent to get us there at 5. So just interesting how that shakes out. From a softball field perspective, a little over, across the board on how those softball fields shake out, and then kind of the same thing from a court perspective. So looking at the going based on population puts us at a higher end for everything in terms of need, just based on these couple metrics that we did pull. Full-time employees as well, which we said maybe not something we want to use, but just wanted to see how it shook out. I was interested just because we are on the lower end as well of the standard there. So I was just also interested to see how it shook out compared to the other things. Acres of parkland and number of parks, in terms of the breakouts of the national standards, we are kind of in the middle. From that perspective, I think the number of parks were in the 20 to 49 range in terms of number, but that's right in the middle of the standard. Because of course counties can also use this metric as well. And then of course the jurisdiction type is also interesting that that's on the lower end of everything when we just think that we're, a city that puts us at the lower end of things. So I know there's a lot of numbers and data in here, but any initial thoughts, reactions on, the overall process or where some of these metrics?
Well, I have a question. If we cross out some of the things that our assessment metric needs, and then we're not meeting some of it, do we run the risk of not being eligible for grants?
No, so the DNR doesn't say that we have to run this needs assessment based on all of those categories.
Okay.
We have to run the assessment based on technically only one of going through the process. So we don't have to look at it all separately. To ease the process and give us, because if we were to take this and look at it at the end, we would need anywhere from, yes, we've met our basketball, or no, we've not, no matter what, we'd need basketball courts. On some metrics, we have more than enough softball fields, and others we need more. So trying to narrow it down to an area that feels comfortable for us so that we can, because again, we're going to truth these data results with public engagement. Again, it may say we need 25 pickleball courts. I'm making some numbers up. And we may say that that's, yes, we have a need for that, or it might say we only need 2 and we have way more pickleball courts than we need. And we would say, no, pickleball is really important to the community. We're going to do something else. So there's still more truthing with public engagement that has to come from these numbers. So we will do more assessment of this, but I wanted you all to understand where we're at in the processing, get your initial reaction to how we're narrowing things down and see if there was any reaction from the group. Okay.
Can I ask, and I apologize if you said this, but do you place weight on any one of, just from your expertise and staff maybe too, is there one that bears more weight than any of the others, like should be the driving force if all things are equal at the end, that population?
Population, it for me is the one that, because there's really a closer combo of like actually how many people you're serving. Cities vary so much on what especially when we're thinking on a national standard, what is a city in Minnesota, what is a city in Florida, what in Wisconsin are so different, but everybody has a population of X, Y, and Z, and so you're responding to kind of some similarities for that. So population is the one that we tend to lean toward. It just is interesting how things vary a little bit with it too. So that's where I like to have another metric for us to use as comparison, as well as for going through things to see if, and of course from a play structure perspective, we have no problem with that here in River Falls. But if that 8 showed up on, horseshoes courts or something like that, then we want to take another look, so. Okay. So then that gets us into our fourth item on our agenda, so the last kind of meeting piece. I wanted to just pause here and have us remember that we're meeting kind of two needs with this plan, that 5-year DNR needs assessment to be eligible for grant funding, but then also making sure that we're thinking about the longer 20-year needs or for the plan to really align with our bike ped plan and comprehensive plan. So that we're thinking about both here, and that our goals should apply to both, and what we're thinking and planning for should hit on both of those accords. So wanted to talk about park categories. I said we were going to talk about this. This is a part of your agenda, so it was in your packet as well. But there is nothing, there are, just like there are some standards for how many amenities or things you can see, that you can have in a park, there are some standard definitions for what these different types of parks are. So what was provided to you in the packet is based on some of those standards that have to be refined and tweaked a little bit to make sure that they speak truthfully to River Falls, but just wanting to kind of get us in the space that there are parks are meant to provide different functions. They are meant to serve different populations, to be different sizes, and things of that nature. So wanting to take a quick pause here, and it also helps to have that inventory so you can kind of recognize the parks, what existing parks are fall into what category and things like that. So kind of starting from the highest level or largest park is our regional parks. So that's our, our Glen, our Hoffman, are those regional parks. DeSanctis, yep. That serve not only they serve the neighborhood surrounding, are meant to serve the entire city, and they can also serve, visitors and things that are coming into the community. They provide that broader function, and in result are typically our largest parks from a geographical perspective. And then we have our neighborhood parks, which would be kind of the next level down in general kind of size from that standpoint, but are meant to really serve that area, that neighborhood surrounding, so are meant to be served more from a walkable standpoint. I can walk within a, quarter mile, half mile to that park. So, being why, was it Hamilton and Larson were known to you guys, because you probably know the parks that are within the half mile of your house. But they can have a lot of different function in those neighborhood parks as well, from that active recreation to more passive and things like that. And then we have our pocket parks, which you might also see mini park. If you were to look at other communities' plans, is another great term that is used for these types of parks, but there are smaller parks. They, sometimes are a result of a special use or special situation, but they provide a different function in terms of being, generally a place to gather or rest in an area or things like that. They are the smallest of our park categories. We have our linear parks or our greenways, which are, opportunity where we're kind of looking at, aligned with our trail system, which is also defined in here, but they provide, that connection to natural resources, or maybe provide an opportunity for a fitness trail, things like that, where you're longer in nature, you're along the river, or you're along a, corridor or things like that. Then we have our special use parks, which are, can take a lot of different forms depending on the community, but they either satisfy a demand for a specific sport. Let's say we wanted to build a big baseball complex in River Falls was going to be the location where everybody came to hold their baseball tournaments. That would be a special use park. They can also, fulfill other activities, specific activities, or just be, locational. Some communities even, like their cemeteries were our first parks in communities way, way long ago. And some communities still like to identify, like those cemeteries still provide a recreational value. And so they would fall more into that special use park category. And then the last three get into kind of some of what we were talking about too. The trail system, can align with our linear parks or greenways, but again, that's one's pretty self-explanatory. And then of course we have our school parks, which are definitely still a part of that recreation system when especially as they're available to the public. And then our private parks again would be it's there to provide a recreation function, but it's not available to everyone. So again, wanted to just kind of chat through that a little bit. There's some more definition in here that will continue to be worked through. But any comments, thoughts, questions, or maybe anything from staff to add as we've chatted about some of those things too?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is Whitetail Ridge, is that ever included in any of the park?
Yes.
Is that?
Be especially.
It's on the linen.
Oh, is it? Okay. I didn't
Yeah,
see
we have it in
that.
the linear park.
Oh, yes, okay.
And are these definitions going to be adopted into the comprehensive plan?
They will be included in the outdoor recreation
Plan.
yeah.
Okay, so we could say, at the end of this, we have a defined neighborhood park. And if someone says, no, that's a pocket park, no, here we go, this is a definition, you have a pocket park, you have a neighborhood park. Okay.
Definitely, and that gets us into our next exercise. Patricia, you're really good at leading me.
We're pushing.
Excellent. I feel like I'm missing, I don't know what happened there. It went and jumped there. Well, I have more content for us, but I don't know what happened. So now we're gonna jump to thinking about what these park categories are, and we kind of understand the context of what they're supposed to provide, but then thinking about the amenities and what falls into these different park types. So I'm gonna give you this. So we've taken the same inventory columns, but then have it tailored out by the different park types that we have. And so we want to go through an exercise. We want to not necessarily think about how your regional parks function today or your neighborhood parks. We also understand that when, in all likelihood, in the next 10 years, especially, you're probably likely, or likely not going to see a new regional park. But we may, a new regional park, one of those big guys. But we're probably going to see a neighborhood park or two pop up as new subdivisions pop up. And that there is a process that you go through when that new park comes up, you survey their surrounding neighborhood and then work with them to decide what you'd like to see. But we're going to pretend that those great processes don't exist and just think at a higher level. We're thinking about these typologies of the different park categories and then the different types of amenities that we're seeing. Where do they belong from your perspective? So if we were starting from ground zero, we're going to wipe everything clean in all of these parks and we're going to put the amenities back in. What types of amenities are applicable for those different park categories? Does that make sense? Okay.
We're creating our own parks.
Yeah,
On a Girl Scout cookie form.
That's right.
Just like a Girl Scout cookie form.
I didn't even think that. No,
Now you want to think it, right? I was gonna just sprinkle some oil, so I was thinking, oh, man, I could use one of those.
Funny. Okay, so I think, as we go through here, again, we highlighted the categories that we already have in terms of existing amenities, but did specifically leave in some white space for things that we maybe don't have that we should be thinking about as well. I'll use Gaga Ball as another example.
So Gaga Ball is an arena. It's a lot like hockey, only it has 8 sides. And it's a soccer ball type hockey thing. And it bounces off the walls because they're 8 sides versus 4. And the kids just knock each other out nets.
Like a
dodgeball. Yeah, like that, yeah,
With their feet though, right?
with their feet, yeah.
Okay.
Brutal.
My kids love it.
It's very dirty. Love it.
I really want tetherball to come back. That was a
Oh,
big one.
yes.
I was,
Is that on the-
yeah. I did sneak it in there.
Okay, we had kicked the can.
Yeah.
Go back, you know?
The maypole.
So I think the other thing that we need to be thinking of, one big consideration as we're working through this is, of course, thinking about space. And again, recognizing the general massing of these parks and what makes sense. So my thought here is that we're gonna just go through and add some check marks about what aligns. We don't need to be thinking about at this point that, you know, a regional park can only include 4 court sports, but we're gonna check 5. Those get worked out through later in the process. So let's just, you know, call out kind of group things. What I'll do is go through and say, you know, from a field sport perspective, do you want me to be somewhere differently?
You're welcome to just.
Okay, you know, throw out which parks typologies they belong in, right, as we go through. So from a soccer field's perspective.
Regional. And maybe special use.
In school park.
Okay. I'm just gonna keep going, so just interrupt me and stop me. How about softball? Backstops, or that was meant to be batting cages?
School park for sure.
Could be neighborhood.
Yeah, neighborhood park, or just
You-
batting.
Back stuff.
How about youth baseball?
Regional, private park, special use, special.
School.
Okay. How about football?
School.
Is some of these kind of double, I mean,
Well, and then
like.
we've talked about that.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So football could be a soccer.
Yeah, like if you have a soccer field.
Baseball and softball.
Yeah, we've had lots of discussion about open space versus multi-purpose field
Yeah.
versus.
Yeah.
Anything from a field sports perspective that we haven't highlighted that we would.
I don't know where you'd put ice skating rinks, if that'd be a field sport or a court sport.
Or miscellaneous.
I think I'll throw it down here and we can hit it when we get down there.
I was gonna suggest football at regional park, maybe, again, you have a space large enough, if we've got soccer and those other two. seem to be football.
Did you want ice skating or skate park? You said ice skate,
Oh,
right?
Yeah, ice
or
skating.
both.
Because we do have skate before.
Or we have skate.
Anything else from a field sport at this point? Where? No, I think that.
You know,
Do we need
just throw this
something for
out,
lacrosse
and not to go
sports?
down a rabbit hole, but lacrosse.
Lacrosse.
Which parks from a lacrosse standpoint?
Wouldn't lacrosse fit in a soccer and football field, so that would be the same one, right?
You could say school.
Anything else from a field? Okay, then from a court sport perspective, we've got sand volleyball.
Neighborhood park, regional park.
It's at the bowling alley.
The corner bar, no.
So that'd be a private.
Private.
That's
Yeah.
private, right, okay. Well, and almost any of these could be a special use if you've got a,
Multiple ones, yeah.
How about basketball, grouping both that half court and full court?
neighborhood.
We'll have
School.
How about tennis?
Special use, regional.
And pickleball.
regional.
Neighborhood and school.
I'm gonna say yes, kind of to the neighborhood, but no to the neighborhood, because really, I mean, people go there to play and they need bathrooms. So a lot of the neighborhoods don't have bathrooms.
Sure.
So if you're looking at something that's gonna maybe work, you know, it might not work there because there aren't any bathrooms.
For a pickleball court?
Makes sense.
I mean, Wells comes to mind as could be made one, but that doesn't.
We'll probably have to put a porta potty over there.
Well, why is that different than volleyball? Why is pickleball court different? Need bathrooms, but volleyball?
You got senior citizens out exercising and working, might have a little injury in the restroom.
You know, you're right, but you know, sometimes as a family, you go over to play on the sand volleyball court, you go over, I mean, you know.
Okay.
Not everybody lives just across the street, you know?
How about gaga ball?
That's cool. School and neighborhood.
Basically dodgeball in a little wall room.
I told Amy I've never played pickleball, so
There you
somebody in this room.
I guess you
or-
won't
You're not
because
the
your
only one.
bathrooms.
You're not the only
There
one.
are.
Anything else from a court sport that we're missing? Okay, then we get into our miscellaneous activities. So these are more, oh no, I skipped play equipment. I jumped ahead of myself. How about play structures?
Well,
Basically,
all of them, yeah.
Nothing linear, it doesn't.
The one thing I'd say about linear, well, yeah, good fitness trails differently, but that's where we can put my tetherball. How about sandbox?
Neighborhood.
Nowhere.
Yeah.
Who likes no growth?
Yes.
They're
Backyard.
fine if they're your own and
Backyard.
you keep them clean, but I
Covered.
don't all that.
Covered in the backyard.
Backyard zoning.
Yeah. Okay. How about swings?
Everywhere, everywhere.
There's never enough swing.
And DeSantis Park doesn't have any.
Are you serious?
It does not. It's got the baskets.
Well, now that they have all those residents along there, we might need to put in some swings.
And how about our fitness trail, which is the,
Out into DeSantis.
yeah,
Yeah, we got
The
it.
linear park for sure.
Trail system.
And the trail system.
In the regional, right? It's at a regional park.
Yeah,
so they're talking about a staff that's kind of like, you can sit slowly pedal on your bike while you watch your kids do their thing. Anything else from play equipment?
so I'm assuming slides are in play structures. Yeah, okay.
So when we went through the inventory, like, yes, there's your standard monkey bars and whatever, but then there's also those cool like domed climbing things, and so we kind of grouped those things
Yeah.
together.
What do you zip lines?
What about rock climbing? Would that be too much of like a liability, like climbing walls?
And zip line, my kids love zip line, it's the best.
Well, they don't have to be long.
Got one.
They're, yeah, they've got one over in St. Paul, and kids do that all the
That's a
time.
good one.
My grandson
Woodbury
loved this one.
too.
They're on all the time. And it's just a It's a little structure, but it's cool, but quick.
Which parts from the rock climbing and flying?
A neighborhood,
Regional and neighborhood.
yeah.
Your college has
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was really excited to find when I was in college that there was a rock climbing class, so I could just. I got credit, my one recreation credit I needed, I got to go fly and rock climb. Okay, then to our miscellaneous activities, so these are more of our like active recreation components, but aren't, don't require a field or a court or things.
And do we consider finances in this?
Mhm.
No, okay,
No.
because
Dream big.
we're dreaming? Yep, dream big, okay.
So pool,
Regional. I'd say special use, you could,
Definitely.
how about our splash pads?
and neighborhood, if we're not having to worry about.
I mean, if there's no
water,
budget, we'll take one in every neighborhood.
Just go. That's what I just
Well,
went all
maybe
over.
at school too, I was just thinking. And really finding golf, Sharon's point.
Definitely.
Schools.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Good
nice.
call.
Is that a natural formation?
No, it's just a big pile of foam. Might be real rocks, but
It looks real.
might be real, but they do that all the time.
Okay, how about camping?
Special use. And private.
Mhm.
Regional,
Well, that's where it is, but is that, the best place for it, but.
Somebody's cornfield somewhere,
good in drinking water, you're in a cornfield.
How about skate parks or skateboard
Hmm,
things?
Regional and neighborhood and school. Is the school count? Yeah, put it on the school for liability.
Special use, I could see that being something,
Yeah.
yeah, if you got a sponsor that.
Okay, how about disc golf?
Linear park would be great for that.
Yeah, there you go.
Trail system? Might be too many trees to try to go around them. It's more of a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's their challenge.
we have one on our, somebody called it the Dairy Queen tree, it's like right in a line of the pin, so then if you hit it, you don't mess with your.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. How about, this is where we don't know if we need to go through all of these, but maybe thinking, maybe it's more from an event space where we're not, or it's a place for people to come gather where maybe you might have a wedding, or maybe it's a spot where you have music in the park, like we talked about, that type of specifics, more than just renting out a shelter for my kid's birthday party, it's a little bit more of an event.
So regional.
Mhm. Special use.
What about sledding?
Anywhere there's a hill. You need a, you need a mountain. Good luck in those.
Probably not in the pocket park, because there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kids will turn anything into, it's not it.
Okay, fishing areas is a little specific, but probably want to depend on the location of the park.
Trail system.
Mhm.
Is there a park that has fishing? Glen? Is that?
The down below, yeah.
Down below.
But there's not like a designated. it's just people put it on.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Okay. How about our ice skating?
Regional.
Special use. Are there any other more active recreation activities that we haven't talked about?
I know Patricia mentioned this in another meeting, but beach area,
Yeah, beach area.
Yeah, that would be nice.
I'm thinking like Louise, Patricia.
Where's indoor racket?
I was just thinking, where would you, and that's kind of specific to your
Yeah,
location.
I mean, we just identified the trail for fishing, but it kind of is in the same vein of.
Well, and if you do go down where Lake Louise was, that is fabulous sand. And I said there, boy, if you could like bring some of this over, I mean, if you wouldn't even have to bring the sand in, it's really, really nice sand.
It sure beats the hill out of Kenny State Park going down to the sand.
Rocks, yeah.
The hills are the killers.
Anything else we're missing there?
And Whitetail Ridge has a mountain bike trail, but that's not on there, but.
Oh. Oh, yeah. Off-road cycling.
Then I think maybe just kind of hitting through some of these, there, the open space piece, I think, that's Brandon, I think that's everyone, every category right there, that's a pretty standard one, but some of these become maybe
So-
more,
So open space, that consider forest, a foresty area is open space, right? Anytime you're not in an enclosure.
yeah, I mean, it could be there, we're talking about the boulevard.
Yeah, you're not,
But-
you don't mean totally flat and you have to be able to see for it to be open space.
No.
It'd be,
Could
Yeah.
be, yeah. I mean,
Like indoor.
yeah. So I think, maybe from like a shelter perspective, when we're thinking more of our enclosed or open, maybe for some of these, we're thinking more holistically, a little bit, they take a little bit more space. Is there, from whether they're open or enclosed, but just kind of those shelters and gathering spaces where I can't have, my kid's birthday party versus that event space. Is there anything specific, any specific parks that stand out more than others types?
I think one of the things that when my kids are really little thinking about it at the parks, both regional and neighborhood, is having a place for shade if there wasn't a lot of trees. So I don't, because like I think about going to the pool, like there is zero shade inside the pool. Oh, except I guess there are those like little 3 like seated areas, but just having a place to shade.
And we've talked about that, taking a tent top, and putting it in the corner there, so the corner would be a little bit more shaded than,
Yeah,
so.
or or like that benches are put under trees, so you have a place to sit and.
yeah, there's a lot of neighborhood parks we have that don't have any shelters. So the same thing, you stroll your baby over there and it's hot. Now, where do you go?
Now they're all over the place,
Sorry. I don't want to get.
but on South Street.
And I think, there's some standard things in here that, that whether benches, it can go anywhere, some of those things, I think we need to spend our time there, but just trying to think through a few other things here in terms of maybe some of those amenities, whether it be some things we maybe don't have like, or maybe don't have highlighted either, but whether it's public art or interpretive signage or educational opportunities. Are there any other amenities that you can think of that we don't have that you've seen other places, or it's an idea you have in your brain that we should be thinking about of things that could be possibilities?
Well, this is outside of what you just asked, but it's probably outside of what we're talking about. But I would think that bathrooms, restrooms, and drinking fountains should be mandatory if we are calling a regional park a regional park.
Okay. And
not porta potties. I'm talking bathrooms where you can go wash your hands and flush a toilet. That's what I said.
Any other thoughts, things we missed holistically?
You know, it's-
Quick card on that. Is it?
No.
should be- This group will have a chance here in the coming weeks to comment on Glen Park.
Okay.
There's an active recruitment now for our team. This group will have a chance to kind of review that, so that's part. Brandon so eloquently described as art right now.
And in that kind of line, when you go to many cities, they have a main sculpture, some kind of hereditary or artsy fartsy. We don't have anything like that. We don't have any kind of, you know, I guess Veterans Park would be the best if we were to commit, have some kind of a thing to the pioneers or the Native Americans that were here.
Glen Park, though, also, Mark Anderson and HPC is working on a great interpretive sign also for Glen Park in addition to the garden. So that too is coming in the next few months. I think it's probably coming more on that. The interpretive sign,
Yeah, I mean, I think we're pretty much on like the finer iterations and looking to fabricating. Maybe have it up by September. It's great.
This is something that, and I don't know how much we're about, like the whole social media thing, you know, kids going to parks and stuff, you know. Thinking about a place for teens to they can check in with their phone, show their friends, like, oh, I'm at this
good
park.
idea.
You know, you have the QR
sure.
codes, you scan this, and I don't even know how it all works, but, you know, saying, oh, hey, I'm at this park, you know, your friends could follow you on social media. I don't know, just a way to connect, like maybe teens or.
You know, another thing is a bouncy house or trampoline, in-ground, not the trampoline that's above ground, but in-ground trampoline.
Do kids still do geocaching?
Oh,
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
Because you could do that online.
Well, they do have
Pokemon.
caches.
A lot
of people do it still here.
Yeah, there's a lot of caches at Glen Park, my kids, we do that. And all the along the trails, and we got caches out. Yeah, we do a lot of geocaches.
They don't need to check in anymore, they just follow each other.
Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna throw out one more, a sensory garden.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's good.
Just a sensory garden.
Oh, that's cool.
And I think along those lines, I think I have it on this, not really, on our next activity of spaces to connect with our natural resources too. That was something that was really highlighted through our early engagement was, you know, the opportunity that I could go be with the river, or I could, you know, maybe our next park is a bee lovers haven and there's all kinds of.
Bees all over.
Whatever, the pollinator plaza.
Yeah.
Amphitheater too.
Excellent. Perfect. So I think this is, you know, there's some opportunity for us, as I think Patricia had kind of alluded to, as we've are in this plan are solidifying the definition of these. This plan is not intended to say you can only have, like our zoning code says, in the R1 zoning, you can't have, you know, a restaurant. It's not to say that this plan says it doesn't have a check mark, you know, for whatever. that's not the intent. It's, this is more to just kind of help us think about what these parks are and what these parks can be. This plan isn't intended to say, yes, no, you still have that flexibility. But as our last activity, we're gonna have you design a park. Not to the point where you actually have to design and know the spacing of different things, but as I mentioned as we started, in all reality, like out of all of the parks, most likely would see a new neighborhood park pop up. Those are kind of the most natural things to occur. So I'll let you guys work in whatever groups you want to. This isn't meant to be an individual activity, but not a full group activity. So thinking about that, you know, we've got a full block here we get one whole block dedicated to a park and kind of thinking about our space. But we want you to be thinking about, you know, whether it's what field or court sports should there be, what other amenities, are you gonna create a pollinator park, are you gonna create a skate park, are you gonna, whatever. But thinking about what this next neighborhood park is, what should it have in it? And then how we can kind of think, it doesn't again have to be to scale, because I didn't give you any reference of how big things are. But when you're thinking about this space, is half of it dedicated to playground equipment? Or is half of it dedicated to your sensory garden?
So we don't know even the acreage? We don't know if that's 30 acres or
No,
5 acres?
It's a neighborhood.
It's a
it's a neighborhood park, so it's a block.
But if you're saying one block, Wells Park is probably the closest to
Okay,
that layout and size.
Yeah, but we're not asking you to be specific. You've got, we're thinking a little higher in the sky. But we also really want you to think creatively. So down in the miscellaneous amenities, we threw out a couple of things like public art or our cultural resources. So is there, you know, thinking about some different communities, whether it's, you know, racial, LGBTQ, where we could have some spaces for some different groups or cultures that could be celebrated in parks, or interpretive learning, whether there's, you know, if it's some park near a library and you have some book learn, I don't know, something, whatever. The sky's the limit on what those could be. So wanted you to think, have the opportunity to think not so much about purely recreation, but some of those softer or more passive components there. So I've got some markers. I'm just gonna, you guys can decide how you want to work together.
But we're sitting right here, so we might as well.
Yeah,
Let's
can we work together?
Yeah. I have a Sharpie in my. I now know how I am.
You guys want to do one together?
Oh, yeah. And she, I would give you should do it.
I was at Twenties already.
I couldn't notice. And it's background.
My favorite part.
But yeah, I like a shelter.
But if somebody.
Is there one just to sit and stare? Is there another one? Yeah.
So I mean, it's got really big eyes.
I got that.
Even, you know. It's just-
Yeah. I did bring markers and stuff.
Just take a marker.
Sean and I, baby project.
Yeah, I think we should set it over here.
Yeah.
But also we need to fit one.
Yeah.
That's the one I parked. That's because you like,
Oh, no, it's
Some certain parts.
Now, do we want people to get lost or do we want to?
Well, I think it's just, yeah, I really see like in a spiral,
I know that,
Lighting and everything.
Yes.
I like that. The taller the better.
So we kind of like the idea of like some sort of circular kind of trail that would then move us through some of this.
You get the homes that are developing. You guys can
Okay, so in some bigger parks, these other parks in the state too, where they have. Yes, but it's like.
I like parking handful. Yes, exactly. So I'm gonna start doing, I don't know, pretend some
But yeah,
like,
that's.
hey, there you go.
So I mean, like, you can put it anywhere, I mean.
And I think it's something like, yeah, lots, you know, like. Capital side. Job acquisition. Okay, so you got that.
Great, anyways.
I know the one thing about Banana, you could actually see it trails off.
All right, I think.
Yeah, so.
And then we can make our.
That means it has to have ramps to it too, so it can be accessible.
On the top of that.
You're at that.
Yeah.
Or was that, just right here? Oh, no, 'cause it's my other side.
I do like the idea of trails as well. Is there possible?
So we'll buy this.
You come into me this way. Just like that. Then you got your question.
Oh, that's, so you want to watch
Our trail that allows
and
trees.
Yeah.
Maybe some smooth.
What I was thinking is we could do like
It's not like we
it's covered.
I got this.
Well, this is kind of silly.
Stay away.
I want to kind of be the perfect, they're not walking.
Yep.
Yeah, because then
And you want to make sure they complement each other, so you know, I would love to see.
What about a giant
skateboard,
chest
you know,
bar,
something like
chest
that. It's
bump
like,
or
no, you don't
something?
have kids playing here, someone's.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
Yes. There's two ideas I have. One is we can play chess. The other one is actually did using chess. There's two different ways you can look at them. Is this water? I can see that. Especially if you're seeing.
Yeah, this would be porta potty.
I'm down with the bar.
Top down.
Yeah. And they do.
Is
there any other?
I like that idea. Or pavilion.
What about some? So like, I like the idea.
I know we put the shelter in between everything. It's really popular. Oh, yeah, right. I mean, this is.
Well, you can do that, do like a
So everyone.
Have a big open.
Now we need to, you know, this is the one that we're. So
And I don't.
we gotta have it. She is right. I do agree with it. And could it be in nature? So it's not a pavilion and nature. Or is it so the sensory aspect of it. As well. So these are bird houses.
So if you have,
And we'll have signs. that-
I don't know if that's the word, but.
Is that miscellaneous?
Where you have. Pictures of the ice you're removing, fishing, chalk, locker, something.
Okay, man. Well, you know, some, if you go to like Park City, they have a machine. There's I just know how much social engagement is. It's got their natural habitats right there.
What about adult?
People laugh at me.
We don't walk over and do that. Or do that, we'll wait. I've done that. That's all I like. See it.
We'll give you guys one more minute. Oh, no, come on.
I know it's flowers, but.
I like that. And they can come right down. Extra acceleration. Perfect.
And then it could be further down. I see. Yeah. Oh, we got it.
I'm a landscape architect by education, so I love it.
It's got the physical and the cerebral aspect. There's some for everybody.
Trees, others, like.
I do think.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
That's our sunshine. Light flowers.
She's laughing at all of these. This has me.
No, I love it.
We have stadium.
We do 30
We've got 30 seconds.
Yeah, we can always put in more trees.
We're drawing a few.
Yours could be called Sherwood Forest.
There's a Sherwood Forest in the neighborhood that I grew up in.
Ah.
Beautiful part. Taking me back to my childhood today. Okay, well, pick someone from your group to present. It can be very brief, but just one put together.
Here's mine. We decided we wanted bathrooms in our neighborhood park because we're putting in an amphitheater.
Ah.
With the natural stones.
Right,
Like-
right.
Like Veterans Park.
So all the neighbors
so-
that they complaining,
Yeah.
now there's music until midnight.
So the only problem Cindy had was, I mean, we put the playground there, we're gonna put swings in with trees around there, was, and we switched it up, and this would be the open field or multi-use one. This one was basketball, but it's really close to the road, so I'm really having a problem with this part. Because the basketball is too close to the road. So ours was trees and amphitheater and the bathrooms that were there with the picnic
Kind of
shelter.
a shelter.
With lighted, Brenda made me put lights in.
Okay, excellent.
You guys.
Which one?
So yeah, we got an interesting, a lot going on in this park. So let's start with this picture. We got a sensory garden with some pollinator and like bee friendly, butterfly friendly stuff. And we got a trail going all the way around the park up into our little observatory.
It's a tower, it's a tower.
Okay.
So look out overlook tower.
So it has ADA access to. And then down under the tower is like a little shelter with bathrooms. There's a bathroom there. Yes, interpretive center. And what else did you say? There was a.
So we have a chess area for people who can play chess.
Like a big, the
outdoor,
giant board.
That outdoor pavilion doubles as a nature center, and we have birdhouses. We have birdhouses, yeah, in our pollinator gardens that go around with our bees and
Nobody's got it.
tarp equipment for the children.
Yes, the kids are gonna get stuck.
No. We
Yeah,
would
oh, and
educate
then-
the
and then there's a
students.
nice hill at the other end with a pond.
I like that.
Those are oak
That
trees,
is
by the
funny.
way.
It is.
Those are oak trees, yes. Trees.
Beautiful. We got benches too.
All right, so our park has, I don't know if everybody can see this, so we're doing, an ice rink / for the winter with a soccer field, basketball court in the summer, so it can be multi-use. There are grills, we have a warming house, with bathrooms, and then the warming house can also be a public art because people can, paint the outside of the warming house. We have a fountain with benches around it, lots of trees and grills, and then we have, a giant playground and splash pad with a shade and benches and a walking path around it. And so that, and there's a hill up here, so apparently the city is gonna buy these houses.
I didn't realize that those were houses.
And then we're gonna sled right into the ice skating.
We're gonna do those string lights.
Yes.
Solar
That's very massive.
Solar operated string lights.
So that is
And the fountain has colors, so you can do red.
Oh, yes.
You wanna do ours?
We can do it together.
Wow, there's a.
We just found that we both really enjoy green space, open areas.
And walking,
Passive.
imagine that.
And so this is just the prototype, it won't be the actual final construction.
Okay.
So there may not be as much trail, but we emphasize our trails.
So we have off-street parking all the way around the block, so there's plenty of parking and nobody's parking in the actual park. We've got a little porta potty down here because everybody at a park, sooner or later, somebody's gotta go. So just a nice little potty. Trail system going all around. We've got little hammocks that rest between some trees through here. This is a little quiet area. In this longer area, this is a water feature. So this is a bunch of rocks with a little trickling little pond and little waterfall. And of course, it attracts the ducks, so we have a little ducky in there. We've got picnic tables there. We've got 4 benches, one on each side of the park, so people can sit and just watch. But otherwise, we got it figured out to what, like a 2-mile loop?
Yeah.
And you just walk that, all the time and.
2.25.
But that's kind of what we did, just a bunch of shrubberies and trees, flowers. We've got some pretty flowers planted through there.
It's just a real relaxing, although some of the other ones sounded beautiful, there will be no flashing lights. There won't be anything to distract you from just the beauty of the green space.
Excellent. Got some great diversity on some. Great job.
Oh, and ours has a little playground set over here too. That's all in our key that we did.
So that-
You did a legend. Yeah, we did a legend and everything.
I will take those because we are from a pop-up event perspective, and we always like to have an idea for the kids. So if there is something that we can do
Turn it in.
to have kids kind of do the same activity at a pop-up event is kind of where we're going. So you guys were our test subjects from that standpoint.
I think it's fun that everybody got the same direction, the same size park, and we have so many different parks. So thinking about how many different kinds of neighborhood parks we can have, we don't all have to have the exact same thing. They can have different character and experience.
Yeah, and I think there's some great ideas that you had that are, could make a really great new pocket park, or, some of those things as well that are, again, things we don't have in current park system.
But yeah, a fountain and a tower would both go really well in a cute little pocket.
Yeah.
We gotta get it.
Exactly. Yeah. So, just to kind of wrap us up in kind of where we're headed, like I mentioned, the next really kind of technical component piece for us is really that needs assessment piece, and what our step in the process is for us to run those numbers, and then at our next meeting, be chatting through, okay, here is what the results of those numbers say to us, here is how we're viewing them in that assessment. How are you guys reacting to that? How does that align with the public engagement that we've heard? And then that's really going to help us collectively work through, okay, it says we need X, Y, and Z. Yes, that, those make sense, or no, we need to get more engagement, or no, this doesn't align with what we've heard, and some of those things. So that's really what we're gonna focus on. And that's really, again, at that 5-year benchmark. We will run it from that. We do have our 20-year growth projections as well. So from a population standpoint, we can look at, because we are over that 20,000 benchmark. So that does put us in that next category for where we would be in the next 20 years. So we will run that as well. That's definitely not something we put sink teeth into in terms of, that says we need X, Y, and Z in 20 years. We're not going to put that in the implementation in that plan in that way, but it also gives you an understanding of the difference between that 5-year picture and that 20-year picture when we're thinking about that growth occurring in the community too. But there's a lot of stuff from a Focus River Falls perspective when we're thinking about all 3 plans coming up here as well. There, from the bike and pedestrian plan perspective, there's a walking tour coming up on the 23rd and a biking tour coming up on the 9th of July.
I think that's TBD, right? The bike tour isn't.
The bike tour, yes, I mean, I don't know about the bike tour.
That's yeah, I think
The walking
it's,
is.
walking is for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that walking, correct me if I'm wrong, is open to the public, but won't be advertised as much as when the biking tour is finalized. That one is definitely one that will.
And what time and where do you meet for the walking tour?
I will get you more information. on
I have
it.
I have it. Just putting this in my other phone. I think it's, if I remember right, it's like, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
5:30,
Patty, could you send?
5:30 on the 23rd and meet right out in front of the chamber.
Okay, 5:30, 23rd,
And
right
it
outside.
said it'd be about an hour.
Okay.
Roughly
And-
a mile.
Other than
Only a
annexing property outside of River Falls than what we have now, do we even have room for more parks, for newer parks? I think, aren't we all pretty much developed?
We are pretty much developed,
So if we're talking future, we're not talking anything within what we know now. It's if we go south or east or whatever, that's where we would be looking at new park plans. Okay.
Unless some houses come down somewhere.
And I'll give you an example where that could happen. This is probably a long shot, but east side of town, Falcon, Morgan, Milo neighborhood. But we've got some real stormwater issues in parts of town. This will probably give us more from a city council standpoint, Sean. But there has been talk of, would you buy up a couple of homes, put some kind of stormwater retention and be able to create a park, because there's really a deficit in that whole portion of town, 4th Street, 5th Street, all that area, Greenwood Elementary is the only park
Well,
you really have.
Lake Louise is supposed to be Cullen Park, so that,
Potential. Yeah. So, yeah,
Where I'm gonna get
that
my
is one
beach.
way you would.
That'd be about the only way
something.
we could do that.
Yeah, but it's the only way you get it. Yeah.
Being totally new, are we talking about potentially upgrading some of our hidden gems? Is that part of that idea too?
Wells Park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the intent here is that for things that we know specifically that, have been identified, but there's also policies in place that open that opportunity should something come to light. And, I'll use the parkway as an example. Mike talked about, those are ash trees. Those ash trees are gonna have to come down. You now have this random green space that's sure there's traffic moving on either side, but what a great spot for a sensory garden or, something. So there are spaces like that do exist within, your current urban form that have opportunity to become or include other things as well. So that's the couple pieces on the bike and pedestrian plan component. We do have a couple of comprehensive plan or Focus River Falls pop-up events coming up. We were looking to do a event at the food truck event at Rush River next Friday, but unfortunately their food truck pulled out. So we're trying to decide if people will still come to the brewery on a Friday without a food truck, or if we should maybe do the farmer's market the night before. We were really excited. They're very excited to have this as part of their event. They're very community focused at the brewery. We did try the River Falls Farmers Market as well. They are very strictly vendors, so just something for you all to be aware of if you have other community passions that you wanted to, do there as well. But then we will also be using the Meet River Falls event as part of River Falls Days to connect with the public as well, and that is the 9th. And then staff is also working, if you attend the parade on Friday, you get a sticker. Magnet, yes, not a sticker, we already have stickers. A magnet and things, so things coming from that perspective. We are also still looking at the pop-up events for this plan and using a fighting fish game. We've got a couple dates floating around still for that. There is a fish game the night of the 9th when we're already in town. There's also one the night of our next steering committee meeting. If we had a shorter meeting and then went to the fish game, or sent staff to go work at the fish game while we finish up and we join them when we're done. Things like that. And then we do have the council workshop, Focus River Falls update happening on the 12th. So that is at 5.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that will be an update for the council on our entire process. So we will be hitting on all 3 plans and engagement, giving them an update on where we're at with things and where we're going. And then also stakeholder conversations are still here in the mix. They have been updated, the format since we met the last time, so they will be open to the public. They will be advertised as we would a public meeting. There will be points for comments, whether there's, a pause for questions from the public or a comment forum, but we will have opportunities for the public to comment throughout, and then staff will be a part of those as well. So just some refinements from where we were at still, but those are still in play, and when they will be, the groups have not changed. It's just the scheduling of when that pesky 4th of July holiday makes things.
so just so I can get it in my head, because I don't know, these pop-up events, so I know what the fish game looks like. So would we have a booth for people to come and talk and take their name and address and, no, we don't take down, we just give out.
We are taking input, but we're not getting a name and address. We don't have a
We're not
sign-in
trying
sheet.
to, okay.
We're not, yeah, I mean, that we can always have, we're always gonna direct them to the website and things
Okay.
like that. But we don't do the formality of like a sign-in sheet or
Okay.
something like that like we would. But we are, so what we're planning for the brewery, on the comprehensive plan side, we've had a lot of discussion about what is density? What do people want River Falls to look like in the next 20 years? What type of growth do you want to see? Because in early engagement, we heard that we want more retail in, or we want denser housing, or we heard that we don't want River Falls to change at all. So we got every type of input that we can receive, but really no consensus. And so being more specific about what type of development people would like to see. So we'll have a visual preference survey where we've got pictures, and I like this kind of development, I don't like this type of development. You can then take a pin associated with, I really like these townhomes, and I think these townhomes would be really great at this location in the community. So they're putting those on a map. And then we'll also have a kind of 3D environment where we've been having a lot of discussion about what downtown looks like. River Falls has a good downtown, but it's not a big downtown, and there's some contrast between what Main Street looks like and what Second looks like. And so some building blocks to let people kind of actually create maps and building of what that area.
Well, the Kitty Corridor plan has been developed, and it takes out the meridian from the middle and has angled parking. And, I'm like, going, boy, you're asking for an accident when people are used to parallel parking. Now you're angled,
Sure.
and so anyway, that's already been put on paper. Would we be able to just say, we really don't like that anymore?
That's not a done deal.
Well, you guys approved it.
Not any equal parking, that's a suggestion. Just to be
Because it
clear
was
about
just
that.
like,
Nobody liked angled parking when we
I
had
can
it.
tell you
I know.
that's not.
That's why it
an old
changed parallel.
word to that extent.
And we're at this point focusing more on what the built-in, like what the building structures actually
okay,
look like right now in terms of this activity. Things like that are down the road with transportation. So we want to make sure through this process that we don't contradict or make it confusing with what different plans say and what you're following, but there would be more to come down the road.
okay.
Do you check with people when you're talking to them, which make sure that they live in River Falls?
Especially at the fish game, because there's.
Yeah, I really would.
Yes, so we do have, we try to not keep people for a long time. It's meant to be as short of a conversation as we have, but in that introductory questionnaire of understanding where they're coming from, as they're meeting them and understanding context.
Yeah, 'cause if you're asking them what do they want in the park, and they're gonna just go on, oh.
Yeah.
It's gonna look like it came from a resident, and it's like, I don't think so.
So, but at the same time, they are users of our parks, and so that is still valuable input for us to understand, because there is value that comes to somebody coming to River Falls to go to a fish game and fill up that quick trip on their way out of town or whatever. So more to come with that, but wanted to give you a quick overview. I think when we send some information out, we can make sure that you're all aware with what those dates are. Of course, our June update will include everything that is going to happen in July as well, just, and that comes out at the end of the month as well. So that's all I have.
There it is, folks. Well, thanks for doing these in big size. Brenda and I really appreciate it.
I do. I think Mike is next with his couple of things.
Yeah.